Alright, in this video I'm going to do a repair and refurbishment of my old Weber BBQ. You can see it's got a big rust spot. That's from when the movers moved me to a different location and they sort of dented that area of the barbecue. It's caused it to rust heavily. That door doesn't hold on very good. It's not the little attachments on the barbecue itself, it's actually the doors pressed in. That's super easy fix. I just take a screwdriver and pull out the metal a little bit. That's fast and easy. I don't even record that. You can see there's a ton of rust inside the bottom as well. And that's actually from the flavorizer bars inside. And I do replace everything inside and clean it up a little bit as well. So you can see these flavorizer bars, as Weber calls them, are not providing much flavor other than rust. They're also sort of the flame spreaders and prevent flare-ups as well. So if you're down to 3 out of 5 like I am here, and these are the best 3, by the way, then it's time to replace them because they're really not doing their job and you're going to get a lot of flare-ups and your heat is just not going to be distributed well. To clean the barbecue, I don't do anything too fancy. I just use a hose with water and then I take some Dawn dish soap with a Scotch-Brite pad and a J-cloth and just scrub the barbecue down. I focus on that rust spot, and obviously anywhere I'm going to paint I want it really clean and free of any grease. I don't really waste too much time on the inside. I do take some oven cleaner off camera and spray down the inside a little bit, but it's just a barbecue. I'm just going to cook on it again anyway. I'm not too concerned if the inside's a little bit greasy. I've had this barbecue for about 10 years. I think I got it in 2012 maybe. So it's lasted pretty good overall. A couple little minor things with it. Obviously the internals are gone, but other than that, it has been, I guess, a good barbecue. I believe the total cost for this work was about 300 bucks. Mainly it's parts from Weber. So I'm a little bit torn whether it's better to buy a new barbecue or try and refurbish, because it was expensive to do this. On the interior of the barbecue, I'm just using some basic rust paint. This is stuff by Tremclad, and the bottom of the barbecue is probably the worst, and it's also the toughest to fix. The metal's obviously starting to really rust up bad. So moving forward, I am going to hit it with the rust spray paint a little more frequently, possibly after every winter. You can see that dent is looking much better, but it still needs to be cleaned up more before I paint it. The lid's just held on by some cotter pins and then some little hinge pins that you could just push out. One of the cotter pins was pretty easy to remove. The other one required a pair of pliers, but that one came out without too much difficulty as well. And then once the 2 hinge pins are out, you can just lift the lid straight up and there's nothing really else holding it on. There's a bunch of bolts that hold everything on. So the Weber logo is held on by a bolt. There's 5 bolts on each side that hold the 2 side pieces on. Obviously, if you want to do a bit better of a paint job, you should take the side pieces off. Although you don't really have to. If you masking taped it off, you could probably get away with just leaving it. And the thermometer is held on by a wing nut. Now to really get the rust off of this thing, I'm using a Dremel tool and a wire wheel. And just working that around for a while until all the rust is gone. Overall, the rust came off fast and the Dremel did a great job. I still have a bunch of sandpaper left over from when I did some automotive painting, and I use it here just to rough up the Weber factory paint before hitting it with the spray paint. Overall, I would say that the Weber paint job on these barbecues is really good. It's just that one unfortunate spot where the movers put something extremely heavy on the barbecue and caused it to get dented. To clean the barbecue before painting, I'm using some automotive grease and wax remover. So it is used for automotive painting as well, and it's going to get all that sanding dust off as well as any grease or oil that's left on the barbecue lid. And to paint the lid, I'm using this Tremclad high temperature paint, high gloss. Overall, I'm not too sure how good this paint is. I think it's going to scuff up pretty easily, and I don't think it's nearly as good as the factory Weber paint job. But we'll see. I think in the future I would buy something different. It just seems like it's going to scratch too easily. I guess that's my big complaint about it, but we'll see what the longevity is for this stuff. Now I do 3 coats of paint, waiting about 30 minutes between each coat, and then I leave it sit overnight, and then I come back and I put everything back on it. So there's the bolt for the Weber logo, there's the wing nut that holds the thermometer in place, and then the sides again are held on by 5 bolts. Putting things together, I am a little bit more careful so that I don't scratch up the paint I just put on there. So I do take the sides completely off, whereas previously I just removed the side bolts and sort of yanked the lid out of the sides. Now I actually removed the sides from the handle, so I do have to put the handle back on. And the handle is just held on by 1 bolt on each side. And again, I put the 5 bolts in to hold the plastic sides on the barbecue lid. Once the plastic sides are back on, I just slide the hinge pins back in and then drop the little cotter pins back into the hinge pin. Pretty simple, and that's good to go. It looks like it's got a bunch of white flecks on it in the video, but that's just dust. It's not actually imperfections in the paint job. And I turn the heat up and get it to full operating temperature, and the paint's fine, I guess. I just think it's going to scratch a lot easier than the factory. It just seems a little bit softer. We'll see though. Maybe it'll be okay. Now the parts I'm going to put back on are the electrical igniter, the flame spreaders, or the flavorizer bars, whatever they call them. There's 2 grills, and then there's an upper warming grill as well. So this is the electrical igniter. First thing I'm going to do is remove the old, I believe they call it a flame box. Basically it catches the propane and the igniter's inside there. You can see the old one. Just pull it straight through, and then the wiring for the new one just feeds through the hole and initially just sort of hangs in place. And you got to go around the other side, and there's 2 pieces of metal that stick out, and you just need to fold those over so that the flame box doesn't fall back inside the barbecue. And the 1 piece of metal I folded over on the bottom is also the electrical connector for the white wire. So I'll plug in the white wire and route the cables where I want to go. Later I come back with some cable ties and cable tie them to the frame of the barbecue so the wires aren't flopping around. The electrical connector has a plastic nut that screws in place on the top of the barbecue, and then it really could only fit in there one way. So just put the electrical igniter through the top of the barbecue, screw the little plastic nut on, and then hook up the electrical connectors, white wire to white, black wire to black. Pretty foolproof. And that's pretty much it for underneath the barbecue. The lid's going to tell you which way to orient the battery, so negative is up in this case. Drop the battery in, screw the top down, and then test it out. And it works right away, no problems. Can't really see it working, but you can hear it. A little bit too bright to see the propane flame, but if I close the lid, you can see that everything's lit up there, and it's actually doing a pretty good job. And I'll just turn everything on, see how it's looking, and all the bars are looking good. The flame is smooth, consistent, no high spots. I think it's good enough. Now, like I said, the flavorizer bars, I think they're really just like a heat spreader and prevent flare-ups. I'm not really sure what kind of flavor they add, but they just drop into place. It's pretty obvious where they go, and this barbecue takes 5 of them. Different Weber grills might take a different quantity of them. And I think that these were actually the most expensive components to replace. I also got these little Weber drip trays. Nothing too special, just drops into place under the little hole where all the grease is supposed to drop through. Previously for me it was just big chunks of rust. And then I did get some new grills. Mine were more than just dirty, they were also collapsed a little bit, which is why these are sort of beneficial. I probably could have reused mine and cleaned them up, but like I said, they were starting to collapse in certain places. So I figured I would just buy these, and then all the internals on this barbecue are new. And then the last thing I got is the warming rack, which again, I probably could have cleaned up and just reused. But I figured after 10 years, I would just replace everything and basically have a new barbecue, but with some exterior character flaws. So I do light it up and get everything hot, and the first thing I cook on this thing is hamburgers, and it did a really good job, no flame ups, whereas previously I would have flames everywhere. Anyway, that's what it looks like when it's done. It works well. I'm just gonna have to wait and see on the longevity of the paint job. Anyway, thanks for checking out my video. Don't forget to like and subscribe.